Good day, everybody. This is another edition of Coffee with Cathy, and today we're going to talk about transportation. Transportation around the state, what transportation means and what it includes, and sort of what is the vision to upgrade Connecticut's transportation system and how much it impacts the state overall. And with me today is the Deputy Commissioner of the Connecticut Department of Transportation. Deputy Commissioner, if you could introduce yourself to the people in the 19th District.
Hi, my name is Anna Barry. I'm Deputy Commissioner to Commissioner Jim Redeker, and we're very happy to be here to talk about the state transportation system and where we're going.
So thank you so much for taking time. I know you're super busy. There's a lot going on in transportation in the state of Connecticut. You came from Massachusetts and you worked on their transit system up there, and I'm glad we were able to steal such an expert from them. Really appreciate you coming here. We've been talking about transportation in the state of Connecticut, and there's a lot of needs in Connecticut. Can you describe some of the needs that we might have in Connecticut vis-a-vis the transportation system?
Well, yes, Connecticut has an extremely robust multimodal system, and a multimodal system of ours serves a lot of needs of the citizens for mobility, for their economic movement of goods, movement of themselves for work and school. But it's an old system. We're an old state, and we have the needs to rebuild and rehabilitate our older infrastructure, whether it's roads, bridges, highways, railroads, bus systems, bus facilities, and highway facilities as well. We also have a need to enhance and grow these systems in order to meet the growing and changing needs of the citizens of Connecticut. So when you put together a state of good repair, safety, enhancement, and improvements, there's a lot we'd like to do and a lot we're planning to do.
And so many people don't realize that our system is actually an aging system. It's been around for a lot of years. It's been around for, in some cases, 300 years. And so it does need to be upgraded on a regular basis. We have old bridges, old roads, and they just need to be taken care of. And to do that is somewhat expensive, is it not?
It's very expensive, and we have over the last few years had about $1 billion plus program of road, bridge, and transit improvements and state of good repair projects in order to do that. A lot of people don't realize that, say, the interstate highway system was built in the 50s. Well, all of the things that were built in the 50s and 60s now are on the schedule to be repaired or rebuilt or replaced. So it's definitely a substantial mission.
And the undertaking of working on the interstate system is not only expensive, but it's being upgraded as you're handling different stormwater, different culverts, different bridge structures. Sometimes they have to be higher or lower than what they were. But you have a new way of doing bridges that you build off-site now and bring on and are able to do that work much faster.
Well, that's a great example of the DOT trying to be more efficient and effective with the citizens' funds. This is called accelerated bridge construction. There are a number of ways to do that, but the one you're referring to is building the bridge decks off-site, putting them on a multi-wheeled vehicle, and then moving them in, just demolishing the existing bridge and moving them into place. I think the first big example we did was one down in I-84 in Southington, I think 3 years ago now. And we actually did it was from Friday night to Sunday afternoon, and we had everything moving by 5 o'clock on Sunday, and it was a marvel to see, and I think you might still be able to see it on our website. But that's one of the ways that we try to minimize the burden on the transportation system, make sure people can still use the roads instead of taking them out of service for months at a time. But at the same
years.
time, or years, and then getting them back in service and getting them usable and new and upgrading the state of good repair quickly.
And so our bridge systems are, in some cases we have very tiny bridges, in some cases we have very long bridges, like the Gold Star Bridge that's down in Groton, Connecticut is being rehabbed right now in part. So, my understanding is that the Department of Transportation also helps out with some of those small bridges, which tend to be in local municipalities. You have a local bridge program, and could you discuss that a little bit?
We have a Town Aid Road, local bridge, and for the time being, we have a program called LOTSIP, which is Local Transportation Aid Program, which we've attempted to make it simpler for cities and towns to get the money they need to improve their roads and bridges. And clearly at the state, we understand that our state roads are not quite as useful as they could be if you can't get where you're going once you get off the state road. So we're anxious to support the whole state system through those programs. Unfortunately, those programs are, the ones that are most in jeopardy right now as we enter into the financial issues that we're having right now. But for now, they are part of our mission.
And so when actually I got to see Commissioner Rediker when he talked to the Council of Governments in the southeastern section of the state. He talked a bit about revenue, and many people wonder what we do with gas tax and the gross receipts tax. Mostly those go into the Special Transportation Fund, and many people think that because there's less money, that money is being taken out. That's not the case. There are more efficient cars, less gas, less real dollars being put into the Special Transportation Fund, less real dollars being put in from the gross receipts. So have you, I know that the Commissioner has done some research on revenue, and every state around us uses tolls. I believe Massachusetts, where you came from, uses tolls to augment the Special Transportation Fund. What do you think of the toll revenue concept?
Well, at the DOT, we don't feel it's our role to tell the legislature how to fund the state systems, but clearly, it's our job to inform and educate about what those systems can do. And Connecticut abolished tolls many years ago, probably for good reason, but now tolls have changed, and it's definitely a source of revenue that's used all around us, even now in Rhode Island. And it's a way of collecting revenue that's relatively technically simple and allows people to pay for roads they're using, whether they're from the state or not. We also think we've been surveying systems in use around the country, and there are many ways you can design toll systems to sort of lessen the impact on the local resident, the people using the roads, and the residents of Connecticut in a way that's fair to them, but also helps us comply with the federal rules. So, it's certainly a revenue source that's implementable and would provide, we think, somewhere around $750 million a year once if we're able to put them online about 5 years after they were approved.
So $750 million, and if you looked at the 5-year transportation plan that the state has been talking about and the commissioner established a number of years ago, that would cover the transportation system upgrades and then some. It would help out with the local municipalities and some of those other programs that would also help people at the local property tax level by not increasing their costs there.
Yeah. When you finally do the math on it, that's what it would do. You can't use toll revenues for everything, and some toll revenues have to be used in certain areas. But what it would do is give us a revenue to use in one location where, say, there's an interstate, and then take the remaining revenues that we needed and apply them to other uses like the local roads. So, we're still sorting through what the regulations require, and the federal administration may yet change those rules, but absolutely that would be the delta we need in order to start to fill the gap in what we need to do to fulfill our program. However, understanding that it couldn't happen for a few years because of the technical work required.
Right.
Yep.
There would still be a need to play the system out, make sure that it's done correctly, make sure that it's being instituted in a way that would be able to be appropriately used.
Exactly.
So there's rules that go along with these things.
Yes, and we try to follow them.
And some of the other you talked about the multimodal transportation system. There's other things that the Department of Transportation is responsible for. They're responsible for the trains in Connecticut. Is every other state responsible for the trains in their system?
The responsibility for trains is allocated differently in most states. Connecticut is pretty unusual in that the state DOT does have the responsibility for the trains. Generally, in other states, they're handled by regional authorities.
So that's another responsibility that the state takes on that other states do not. In other states, there is state government and county government takes on a lot of road repair and handles road issues. Is that something that you've noticed in your work in transportation?
Not so much. Coming from Massachusetts, county government's fairly weak, as I think it is here. It's sort
We have none.
there are relics of things like courthouses left, I think. So it doesn't have any real responsibility in transportation for the most part. I think further Midwest and West, that's the case where
Right.
they have a lot more power and regionalism is on a different basis. But here, the state and the cities and towns carry the burden for the most part on transportation systems.
And you also handle the bus systems throughout the state too, and are responsible for overseeing those bus systems. Is that the way it happens in other states?
It's highly unusual. So, the state system, the system grew up here, became the child of the state. Even the transportation districts are largely funded by the state and subject to our oversight. In general, across the country, most of these systems are city or regional authorities, not the state. So it's definitely a different way of doing business.
And you do it all with far less people than you used to have. I believe the commissioner said that when he started at the Department of Transportation, he had some 4,400 people, and now he's down to less than 3,000. I think it's around 2,500 staff. That's a significant decrease in employees to do all the work that you do, trains, buses.
It's definitely a reduction from years past, and it varies a little from day to day and week to week based on retirements and filling some jobs. But it's definitely the trend has been reduction, and that's why we've really worked really hard to become more efficient, do things like accelerated bridge construction and many other kinds of efficiencies we've tried to achieve within the department. We're very bullish on the lean system of evaluating our processes and making them better.
I agree with the lean system because we have lesser financial resources right now. I'm the co-chair on appropriations, so we're always trying to do more with less, and we put a lot of burden on our Department of Transportation to do the work that it's doing right now. My understanding on the bus systems is that it's creating some economic drivers in those towns where it is, and you're seeing increased ridership. It seems to have been on pace to increase what's going on. Do you have...
Yeah, that's kind of variable right now. We have some areas where ridership is not up, and then we have others where it's increasing. And I think the prime example of that is, CT Fast Track, where you can actually see development happening, and the ridership continues to rise. And I think it shows the benefits you can have of having a concentrated, reliable, bus service. The rest of our bus service is excellent, but there is something going on across the country where bus ridership is sort of variable. But also the new service we just started between UConn and downtown Hartford campus is doing very well and showing the benefits of that type of focused service.
I think that's a great thing. I was talking to one of my colleagues, and they said that people were actually moving into Meriden as a result of the uptick in having a regional transportation system. It allowed businesses and residents to move back there, and that's unusual, they said.
And Meriden's actually also anticipating the opening of our new Hartford Line service, the new service we're going to operate between New Haven and Springfield. We're going to be adding train.
Yep.
And the train service is now currently a lesser level of service operated by Amtrak. We're augmenting that service up to 17 round trips a day. And Meriden actually is, one of the demonstrated benefits of transit-oriented development. The new station is just about open. There's a garage that we've helped build with the town and the city, and and people are already showing the benefits to downtown Meriden. It's terrific.
I think that's great because that's exactly what we want to see. We want to see people, and that's statistically across the country, that's the next group of young people. The millennials are interested in that sort of living. They're not as interested in the suburbs or the rural areas. They're interested more in city living and having the ability to go down to a show or go out to eat or do any of those sorts of things that you can do in a congregated urban environment. Much different than where we are today. We're sort of out in the middle of the sticks in that rural area, which I happen to love, but my grandkids don't necessarily think it's the best thing.
We try to serve everyone.
I think that's great. And then also, you do the regular maintenance on roads too. You have a very robust group of men and women who make sure that we can get around on snowy or icy days and take care of fixing anything that happens on our roads just on a maintenance level.
The Highway Maintenance and Operation Bureau is just one of the most impressive groups of people I've ever met. I've been in operations for most of my career, almost 40 years, and this group is dedicated, they're knowledgeable, they have a great way of doing business. They're dedicated to their equipment and to the people of Connecticut in a way that I'm so impressed by every time I see them in action.
I am too. I think they do great work. A lot of times people wonder what all the workers are doing, but they have a very dangerous work environment. People don't slow down when they're going by them. I would put a plug in to slow down and move over. But they really care deeply about making sure that their roads are safe to drive on and that they make the environment very good for people in general, and I think that that's to be commended.
Yeah, they work very hard under very difficult circumstances. You can only imagine what it's like having cars whiz by you at 75 miles an hour, if that. And I would also
That's slow, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, and I would like to mention that in the last 2 weeks, we actually had 2 of our highway operations crews actually be involved in the rescue of people on the road. A young girl who was in trouble was assisted until police could come to a situation. And another case, a person who was having a crisis, a health crisis, was found and attended to by one of our crews until they could be assisted by the necessary support. So they're the eyes and ears of the state on the road, and they do a good job of watching out for all of us.
They do. I think that that's wonderful, and you'll have to extend our thanks to them. Because we know that how much work they do and how necessary it is to have them there, and I think that it's great. We've had a little bit of controversy about the road salt issue, but I think that that's across the eastern seaboard, is my understanding, that we're not really unusual in regards to that.
We might be unusual in that we probably use less salt and chlorides than our adjacent states. We try very hard to be moderate and measured and to follow our procedures, but it is an issue that is gaining attention and that we do have to pay attention to and make sure that we're doing the right thing by both safety as well as our waterways and our groundwater.
So, and I would repeat that often, that we're moderate in comparison to our other states. So when they go to another state and they see bare pavement, that's not necessarily what we're looking for. We're looking for safety. Doesn't have to be bare pavement because you don't want that excess product that gets into our waterways.
That's right. We're doing our best to be safe, but at the same time not be excessive.
Okay. I think that that's wonderful. So we've covered trains, we've covered buses, we've covered bridge construction, and the accelerated bridge construction. I really like that too. I think that's really fabulous because
we have bridge in a backpack too.
You do? What's that all about?
It's a bridge that basically comes kitted up, and it's not quite in a backpack, but it comes in a kit, and you can fit it together almost like your toys when you were a kid.
Like Legos?
Yeah.
Kind of like a Lego set?
Legos or your Lincoln Logs.
Oh, okay.
If they still have those, and
I don't know.
So it's a kitted and fairly easy way to put a bridge together over a small gap.
Yeah, I like to do things in as one construction cycle as possible. A weekend to do a bridge is tremendous because it's, while necessary, it's always aggravating when you get to that one spot. It's always when you're in the biggest hurry of all that you get to a spot where there's construction and you say, darn, now why is this happening today? But, I know you do a lot of work at night too, which is really very helpful to residents too. But your workers then don't get to sleep much, but
and we try to moderate that as well. And it's usually just mostly it's bridge and pavement work in the summertime. And I know we talked about safety, but there are a lot of aspects to safety at the DOT. So,
okay.
We one of the things we're trying to draw attention to, we're going to be opening up our Hartford Line service in the spring in May. And we are trying to visit all of the schools and other areas around the rail line where we have a number of at-grade crossings with the roads. And we're trying to teach everyone, but especially children, to be careful and to engage in good safety when it comes to the railroad, to look both ways, look for trains in both ways, and make sure they're safe and follow the flashers and the gates before they go across.
And they have to look both ways because not every at-grade railroad crossing has the gates. It all depends on where you are in the state.
That's
and
right.
Some people don't recognize sort of where they are and how dangerous it is to take. You can't actually beat a train. They actually move pretty fast.
And they don't stop very fast.
No.
So.
You also do. We have freight rail in the state too, and I think that's good. Have you noticed an increase in the use of freight rail? I have on some of the lines. It seems to me that there's more freight rail out there.
I think we're seeing some increases, but it's a fairly small system, so it's not. It's good if you've noticed it, but I think we're doing our best. We've had a grant program that the legislature authorized to try to improve the capacity. So, and I think some of the other improvements we've done for passenger services also help to benefit the freight system. So we are, I think, seeing some improvements, increases somewhere, but there's still some more work to do, I think.
Well, I know that the commissioner put a little 100-foot section down in the New London port, which connected the ability for ships to offload onto rail, which increases that. And Connecticut does have some ability to double stack cars, which makes it a lot easier and a lot better for our rail companies. And I know there's been some talk between us and Massachusetts and going up to New Hampshire, Vermont, all the way up to Canada, which I think is a great thing because the more we can get off the road system, the better off we all are.
Yeah, we've basically completed our project down on the New London Pier area, but it connects to a short line railroad, which will be that connection up through the rest of New England.
Yeah.
They have what we call a Tiger grant to finish off their high ton capacity project. And I think they're going into construction this spring, and it's supposed to be 1.5 years in construction. So we're hoping that when that happens, we'll actually start to see the benefits. But we'd certainly love to have a ribbon cutting down there in New London because that's a great milestone that we achieved in actually completing that.
I thought it was great because I had talked to the commissioner about it for a couple of years. New London's not my area, but a lot of the rail system goes through my area. Used to be Providence, Worcester, is now Genovese, Wyoming. But I think that it's great to see, and the more we see freight being moved that way, the less we'll see tractor-trailer trucks on the roads.
And we actually, I should mention, we actually just finished the state freight plan that's required by the U.S. Department of Transportation. And in it, we tried to engage in a lot of outreach to both the people that manufacture and ship and receive goods, as well as the folks that transport railroads as well as trucks. And we hope that, with that state plan in hand, we'll start to do some more coordination with the other states around us and the whole region, as well as, the businesses inside of Connecticut to improve the way we serve freight. Some will always be on trucks, but we'd certainly like to move a lot to rail.
Right. And we have a lot of defense industry spending, defense industry jobs that are coming back to the area. So a lot of the Pratt and Whitney and Sikorsky and Electric Boat get a lot of product, and I would like to see them get that product on rail if possible. So.
Yeah, a large turbine doesn't travel anywhere but as well as a railroad. So
exactly.
Those big heavy things are made for railroads.
They are. They're made so that you can take them off the road and you don't have to worry about somebody figuring out how you're going to get a machine that's almost a lane and a half or a little bit bigger. And I think that's a wonderful thing. So I'm a trained woman. I think that it's really positive for us to see. Are you any longer doing the state port systems? I don't think that DOT is doing them.
No, the Port Authority was created, I think it'll be 2 years ago this summer. And we are, Commissioner Redeker is a member of the Board of Directors. I'm his alternate. So we do participate in port activities and provide the expertise as well as the rest of the transportation context. But it's now an independent authority that is designed specifically to focus on those ports and try to promote them.
So that's one thing you don't do, but until 2 years ago, you were doing not only trains, buses, building roads and bridges and culverts, taking care of them, you were also doing every port in the state,
That's
even
right.
small and large.
That's right, and we do have some boats left, and those are the ferry boats on the Connecticut River.
Oh, okay.
But the ports are definitely, yeah, I think, will benefit from some of that focused attention and development. So, but they were part of our portfolio until a couple of years ago.
So a lot of people didn't realize how busy our DOT is in very much different than other Department of Transportation in other states. So if you do a apples to apples comparison, it's not really apples to apples. There are a lot of differences in Connecticut in comparison to other states.
Oh, significant differences. I mean, if you just take a look at the operating budget itself, which is, a significant, financial cost, more than half of our operating budget is devoted to public transportation. And that's very unusual. So, what it takes to run that, which is, we run it, I like to say our public trans people are like the Texas Rangers, one riot, one ranger. But they, it's a small group that's very powerful, and they run the busiest commuter rail line in the country and a very significant bus system. If you put it all together, it's one of the largest in the country, all with state employees and state operations. So you're right, it's truly different from most of the states that you're going to run into.
And so when people make comparisons for our budget versus other budgets, they're not really making an apples to apples comparison.
No, not at all. I mean, I know that there's a question of the amount of overhead that we devote to, that we have compared to other states. Like, when you pick your charity, you want to make sure they don't have a lot of overhead, but a lot of what's in our overhead that gets reported to the federal government includes all that public transportation system operations. And, and again, it would have included the ports a couple of years ago, which, in the last report that we did.
Right.
So I think it's something that's good to remember because, not every report is apples to apples. And what the federal government asks for isn't necessarily what you want to explain how you're spending your money.
And I think that that's very important for people to understand. So I'm going to start wrapping up, but I would remind people that the Department of Transportation does not make the policy, but you have looked at the ways for us to roll out something like tolls, and I would say that there are ways to not impact residents as much as out-of-state folks that are using our highway system that we and our bridges that we count on. So I appreciate you doing that kind of work because then we can actually show a good, robust plan on how we could roll things out. So,
and we do have some information that we're planning to bring to the legislature, I believe, in March on all of that.
That'll be wonderful. I sit on the Transportation Committee too, so I get to listen in on all of the conversations that you have and get to see all your plans and ultimately get to see the whole plan anyways. But it's always nice to get the back and forth questions answered so that you can say, in my area, I'd like to see X, Y, and Z and see where we can move things along. So you have a very robust website too. It has a lot of information on it. So if people wanted to get on your onto this website, how would they do that?
ctdot.gov. And I will say that we just added the lists of projects that would be affected by the financial issues we're having.
Okay.
So people can find that prominently on the front page.
Okay, so if they're looking for a project to be done, a local bridge, I know that the LOTSEP programs, some of the programs in LOTSEP are on that list, and I think that the LOTSEP program is a really important program, and Town Aid Road is extremely important to most municipalities, having seen their costs go up, and they use this for maintenance and some of the repairs of local roads. So I think that that's something that people should recognize, that this financial situation could impact a lot of different programs.
Yeah, those systems, unfortunately, train and bus services, LOTSEP, Town Aid are all cash out the door, so they're among the first things that are affected when we start to have financial problems.
Well, I'm hoping that we can start fixing some of these things. I know we dedicated 0.5% of the sales tax into the Special Transportation Fund. We're not taking money out of the Special Transportation Fund, but the gas tax does not generate the funds it used to generate many years ago. And Deputy Commissioner, I want to thank you very much for coming out and talking to people and explaining some of the very important pieces of the Department of Transportation and how much work. And please let your folks know that we really appreciate them looking out for us and thank them for doing so much. So everybody, you know that here we are, and if there's something that you would like to hear about, you can just call the office. My number is 860-240-0579. Give us a call, let us know what you want to hear about, and we'll get some guests in to talk about all the different issues that are going on in the state of Connecticut. And I look forward to seeing you all on the trails. Thank you.